Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on Learn Rust with me, Gyan. In today's video, we'll be discussing an important concept known as functions. This functions concept can be found in the third part of the third chapter of the Rust programming language book, which we are referring throughout this tutorial. So, without further ado, let's get started. You can see the third part, that is the functions part, under the third chapter titled Common Programming Concepts in the Rust language book that we are referring. I'll be adding the link to this book in the description box below. Now let's start with the coding section, right? So I'm sure by now you must have, all of you would have seen that there is the function that we are using or writing most of the times is titled as a main. So as you can see, the keyword to define any function is fn, that is function, followed by the name of the function and then open brackets and close brackets. So these are circular brackets, right? And inside this, of course, inside the first set of brackets that goes with the functions, we can define the function arguments as well. The function main is an important function which takes in or which acts as the entry point for all of our programs. The function code that is written within the main is enclosed within curly brackets. So as you can see, this is the start and the end of the main function. Now over here, I have just given a simple command to print hello world in the main function. Let's run this file and see how the output comes to us. So I'm going to just alright, so put it all under variables, mutability, and then here is a source. Inside my source folder I have a bin folder, which is where I have created the functions.rs, as you can see. Now let me put this here. Let me go out to source. To run this program directly, I'm going to use cargo run. I'm going to say the destination bin and the file name, that is functions. So you can see that it prints hello world, right? So this is what we are interested in the most. Let me save the changes that I made. Okay, it's gonna recompile the file and it ran by producing the output hello world. So right now we are just printing a simple statement hello world. Now let's write another function which is not a main function and call that function inside our main function. So I'm calling my function as another function and it's already showing us a red. What that means is we have not yet defined the function. So let's get out of main, right, and define this function. So I've already written the function code here using the keyword fn, another underscore function, and inside this I'm just again writing a simple print command, which is another function, right? Now this function is being called in the main function, and this statement, that is another function, should be printed when we run this program. So let's clear it again and run. So as you can see, the second statement, that is another function, is being printed. So we can call the functions just by writing the function name and putting parentheses around that. If there are any arguments, we need to send the arguments. Otherwise, we can just close it with a semicolon and that function will be called. Now, of course, we don't want to just write blank functions, right? Most of the times we are sending some kind of arguments, we are expecting some return values, etc. So let's start with the first step, that is sending arguments to a function. So what I need to do is I need to write a function that will take some sort of parameters. Let's see how that function can be written. So again, I use the keyword fn, and then I'm writing the function name, which is another function with params, right? And x is the input parameter to this function. Now, as you can see, the type of the input parameter is mentioned as i32. So this is one of the important points to note in Rust. Every time we send an argument to a function, we need to explicitly mention the type of that argument. So here x colon I32, which represents the type of argument. Here in this example function, we are only taking a single argument. So here I'm printing the value of x is x. So whatever value will be sent to this function will be printed inside this function. Now this function, similar to the other one, I'm calling it in my main by writing the function name and sending an I32 parameter, that is unsigned integer. So I'm sending a value of 42. Now this function, when called from the main, should print the value of x is 42. So let's save this and run this program. All right, so as you can see, the value of x is 42 is being printed on the terminal, right? Now let's just modify this a little bit and send two parameters to a function. So we need to write a function that accepts two parameters. So let me uncomment this. I have already written the function. So another function underscore w underscore p, that is with parameters. Here I'm sending an unsigned integer parameter, which is x, as well as a character argument, that is y. So this function should print the value of x and y is whatever value we send to this function. Now we are calling this function with the value 30 and g. So this should print the value of x is 30 and y is g. So let me save this. As you can see, the value of x and y is 30 and g. So the expected statements are being printed. I would also encourage you to try more of these functions, write different types of functions and print them as we go, right? Now, the next concept that we'll be looking at is statements and expressions. All right. So one thing to know about the statements is that statements are instructions that perform some action and they do not return a value, whereas expressions evaluate to a resulting value. Now, every function is composed of statements and expressions, right? So you are performing some operations, you're doing some actions, and you may or may not return a value. In that case, it becomes a statement. But sometimes you need to perform some operation which results or which evaluates to a value. And in that case, you will use expressions. So every function consists of a list of statements or a set of statements and expressions. For example, let var is equal to 6 is a statement. Here we are creating a variable and giving it a value 6, right? Whereas if I try to do the same, that is, I try to assign so x is equal to, okay, here x is equal to 7 is a statement, right? It just says that the value 7 is being given to x. Now, this does not return any value because it's just a statement, it's not an expression. So when I try to allocate this statement to another variable, right, here we should ideally get an error. Rust gives us an error because here we are saying that a statement is being assigned to another variable, which is not possible because only expressions evaluate to a resulting value. A statement does not. So let's try and run this. For now, let me just comment these out. Okay, so as you can see that this is not found in this scope. So here you can see that this one gives us an error because here we are not giving an expression. Instead, we are trying to assign this to a statement, which in turn gives us an error. So this is just to give you a clarity of what statements are, right, in Rust. Now let's go to expressions. So expressions do not have ending semicolons. If we add a semicolon at the end of an expression, we turn it into a statement, which will then end up not returning a value. So if you see the example over here, right, here I'm creating a variable called expr, which is an expression, right, or rather a variable that's going to hold some value. Now, how are we making it hold a value? So if we say let expression is equal to 7. This becomes a statement, right? How are we turning it into an expression? We are opening, we have a opening and closing curly braces inside which we are performing some operation which will return a value. So we created a variable x1 and gave it the value 3, right? And then we incremented x1 by 1. So this entire operation is actually returning the value x1 plus 1, that is 4 in this case, and this value is being stored into the variable expr, right? So if I uncomment this println, this should actually print the value of expression or expr is 4. That is because this particular statement or set of statements inside is actually an expression which is evaluating to a resulting value, and therefore this assignment is legal, as opposed to this which gives us an error where we are trying to assign a statement to another variable. So here, as you can see, there is no semicolon, and that's how we are able to return the value. If we put a semicolon, this becomes a statement, and therefore we are not able to evaluate it to a result, right? So let me run this. All right, so if I run this, it says the value of expr is 4, which is what we wanted. You can ignore the other errors because I have defined functions, but I'm not calling them. Right now, I've just commented them to show you this other piece of code. So now let us see how can we return values from the functions, right? Let me just, yeah. So now I've created a function called function that returns, which returns a value. Now let's go to that function and comment out these other functions. So here is my function that returns a value. So function that returns, right? So how do we write a function? How do we write a function that returns a value, right? In Rust, the return value of the function is nothing but the final expression that is in the block of the body of a function. So fn, again the keyword to declare the function that returns, right? Open close brackets. Here we can also have arguments if required, right? So okay, and then we have an arrow that points to the return value. So here I'm going to be returning a char value from this function. So you can see that I don't have to mention any statement like return, but if I just write a, it implicitly assumes that since this is the final expression, this is the value of the final expression in the block, this is the value that is automatically returned from this function. Now I've called this function over here, that is function that returns, and it should ideally print the return value from the function is a, right? So let's run this piece of code. So as you can see that it prints the return value from the function is a. Similarly, let us look at another function, right? So now I have another function from where I'm trying to return a value. So I've written it as function that returns, right? Now here I'm using the same syntax. I'm saying that it's an unsigned value, right? Unsigned in 32-bit integer, that's what this should return. Now I'm saying that this will just return x plus 1, right? Let's say I take x, okay, and I return I32, okay. All right, let's see what this function does. And I'm calling this by sending a value 4. So as you can see, right, there is no this says that this function is expected to return an I32, but it found only parenthesis, right? Now it says that what the solution could be considered removing this semicolon. Now, what do you think is the error in this function, right? And why does it produce an error, this function? That is because, like I already mentioned, if we add a semicolon, this particular line becomes a statement instead of an expression. So this function actually only has a statement which does not have any return value. But instead, if I just write x plus 1, right, which becomes an expression because I don't have a semicolon, now the return value of this function becomes whatever I send to this function plus 1. Right, let me comment this out since I'm not using it. So now again, I'm calling, let's run the same code and see. So ideally now the return value should be 4 plus 1, because here now instead of a statement, I'm actually returning an expression that is evaluating to a value. So as you can see, the return value from the function is 5. So this has evaluated to a return value where you can, because I changed it from a statement to an expression, right? So I would also request you to experiment with other different kinds of functions that exist, and you can also see the sample code that is present in the chapter itself. There is some more interesting code that I haven't actually copy pasted, and I've just shown you some examples of what I found would be significant, right? And I would request you to explore more and find out how different types of functions, how different types of parameters, arguments will work when you send them to the functions. Now let's quickly summarize. The keyword to declare a function is fn. The syntax is fn, your function name, and then your argument list. One of the important things to remember about Rust is that, so if you see right in the beginning, it has been told that Rust code uses snake case. What that means is the name of your function will be all letters, lowercase, and to separate the words, you will use underscores. So you can see here another underscore function. So all are lowercase and the words are separated by underscore, right? So your function name would be in snake case, followed by the argument list, open and close parenthesis. Each type of the parameter in the function argument list should be defined. That is, data type for each parameter should be mentioned. Functions are made of statements and expressions, right? And by default, whatever is the last expression resulting value in a function, that is returned by default in the function. It should be of the same type as the function return type. The difference between statements and expressions is that expressions do not have a semicolon at the end and they evaluate to a resulting value, whereas statements do not evaluate to any resulting value. If you want to return a value in a function, you have to use the arrow operator. We need not name the return variables as such. We just need to mention the data type that we'll be returning. Thank you everyone for watching this video. Stay tuned. There are a lot of other interesting topics as well that I'll be shooting that are a part of this series. And I hope you are able to continue with me throughout this series. Do mention if you have any feedback, any comments, or any other code samples that you tried using all these Rust topics. And thanks once again for watching this video. If you did love watching this, I would request you to subscribe to my channel. One like or one subscribe to my channel may not mean much to you, but it offers me and other content creators who are creating free content to, it gives them encouragement and motivation to create more and to share more. So thank you once again and have a great day.